Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I am so excited for today's episode because we don't have an amazing guest for you. We have two amazing guests for you that I am so excited to learn from both of them and hear their stories because they are doing incredibly impactful and meaningful work, and I know that they're going to change the way that we view strategic planning. So let me introduce you to both of them. Their names are Adam Wolford and Sophia Shaw. They both have incredible backstories, and they are both incredible, not only people, but entrepreneurs and business leaders. I'm not going to toot their horns too much because they're going to give you their backstories, but I will say they're both incredibly accomplished from their professional careers. They've both been on the boards of nonprofits. They've both led teams in for-profit industries and throughout different industries as well at rapidly growing tech companies and companies in general. And together, they have founded a company called PlanPerfect. Now, we fell in love behind the scenes with what PlanPerfect is doing as soon as we read the headline on their website, because PlanPerfect's website, it states at the top, success starts with a plan. Make it perfectly yours. And the way that they talk about their company is that it's technology inspired by nonprofit leaders, driven by tech experts. We are all in for a real treat today because they are both incredibly accomplished. They're brilliant at what they do, and we're going to learn a lot that puts strategic planning into perspective. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Adam Wolford and Sophia Shaw. All right, Adam and Sophia, it is so great to have you both on the show. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Heck yes. So I'm excited for both of you to give us our backstories. Take us beyond the bio. Sophia, I'm going to kick it off to you before Adam jumps in. Who's Sophia? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I love the neon behind your intro about do what you love. I've done what I love my entire career, and that's been in the arts, it's been in the environment, and it's taken me to every which way of a nonprofit, from being the person in the mailroom to the CEO to the board chair to consultant. I had the honor of leading the Chicago Botanic Garden for 10 years and teaching board governance of nonprofits at Kellogg, at Northwestern. And then I met up with Adam, and I'm doing what I love even more with PlanPerfect, our new software to help with strategic planning.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, go ahead. I was going to say I'm happy to jump in and give you a little bit more of my story. Sophia and I crossed paths a number of times in our career. I started my career in the consulting world, kind of following the big company thing. I went to Cornell undergrad, then went to Accenture, then Deloitte. Never really actually doing what I loved, but doing what I thought I should be doing. When I went to get my MBA, I really questioned that process, and it was through Sophia's class that I kind of first interacted with nonprofits and fell in love with the space, as well as entrepreneurship. So after I graduated from Kellogg, I went to run a product team at a Series A startup. Left that role 2 years ago and reached back out to Sophia. We started working together on some projects, realized how much we loved working together and wanted to make it something a little bit longer term, which led us to PlanPerfect almost a year ago. So really exciting journey for us as well.
Yeah, I love that, because for both of you, I think it's clear, even in those brief overviews and backstories, that entrepreneurial bug was always there. And so to see the two of you fully step into that, Sophia, you talk about how important it is to do work that you love. And Adam, it sounds like you always knew and you were just kind of resisting along the way. It's really cool how that's culminated in a business that's making a difference, obviously at the highest level. Where we have to start today is with regards to strategic planning. I have become a sucker for the strategy versus tactics ever since I started playing chess and started to understand the difference in chess terms between strategy and tactics. But I want to hear from both of you. How do you define strategic planning? And I guess obviously with a real strong focus on that strategy element.
Every time you walk out of the door, you need to know where you're going. You need to have the overall strategy. Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? Before you actually start taking your left and your right and stopping at a stop sign, those are all the tactical things that happen as you're getting from point A to point B. But strategy really is the big picture. How do you want to motivate change, make a difference in the world? And that's the big picture, but you can't get there without the roadmap.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Sophia is saying. I think a lot of it for us is that the tactics are part of your strategy. It's how you actually execute what you're trying to put forth into the world. But I think without having that overall roadmap of where you're heading, a lot of the times the tactics can feel aimless. So we really see this as a way of coordinating across your board members, your senior staff, all the way down to your frontline employees, helping them to drive forward the overall vision and mission of the company through their strategic plan.
Yeah, I want to go here with you both then, because I love that word roadmap. And so I think that entrepreneurship and nonprofit world, they're so tied together in the fact that we are mission driven. We know where we want to go. We have the destination in mind, but I would argue that this is a rare field. Nonprofit, entrepreneurship, we'll lump them all in together today, but it's a rare field where the roadmap is not paved for us. If I have a 9-to-5 job, then fortunately I have somebody else who's telling me what they expect from me every single week. But when it comes to growing a business or growing a nonprofit and in enacting those missions that we're all on, what is that roadmap? How do we even start to piece together that roadmap?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. I think this was probably the hardest part of the transition to me, was going from a more 9-to-5 employee or always having bosses to really kind of driving on my own. And I think, all of the adages that come in the world of entrepreneurship, I think, are so true, but some of them you have to live to really understand. So for me, I think the pivot, or the hardest part of transitioning and figuring out that roadmap, is just being willing to go do. I think as a consultant, I was always planning for other people to go do things, and a big part of my job was planning. I think what it's now pivoted towards, and I think Sophia and I have done so well, is really just executing quickly, moving quickly, and then using those learnings to really inform our next steps or inform our roadmap. And I think the name of the podcast was so attractive to me because I felt like I was a entrepreneur for so long. I was dabbling in different parts of it, and I think really diving in head first was where I found so much of the value and the learning in defining that roadmap as you push forward.
Yeah, Sophia, anything you want to add there? Because we're trying to make sense of how we're getting from point A to point B to that destination we want. But gosh, there's probably so many detours we could take and will take along the way.
Yeah, we were talking recently about how a large part of strategic planning is really being able to communicate what you're trying to do. So it's not so much just saying to oneself, this is what I want to do, or saying this is my destination, but creating the messaging in a written down plan that you can share with your staff, your donors, anybody who supports you, the press, grant makers. Because if you can't share a common language around your goals, then you're never going to get there, because you need everybody in an organization, from the person who is on the front of the camera like you to all of the people who are helping you execute your vision and dream, to be on the same page.
Yeah. Sophia, I want to keep going deeper there with you, just knowing that you've been the CEO of nonprofits before, and you've obviously been at every different level of board engagements. With that in mind, obviously people, that's what any business, any nonprofit, that's what life is about. I feel like we kind of distract ourselves when we call businesses B2B businesses, as if business to business is a thing and it's not just people behind each of those businesses. So Sophia, knowing that part of that roadmap is getting everyone on the same page, talk to us about some of those connections, and really I'm picturing you as kind of the quarterback on the field of saying, hey, this is the way that we can all get together, because I would imagine that in many of the boardrooms that you've been in, if there's 5 different people, there's 50 different potential directions. How do you get everyone on that same page?
That's really taking the ego out of it. And maybe that's why I've been drawn to nonprofits my whole career. It's because at the end of the day, it is more about the mission than it is about ourselves. You're not, the only difference between a for-profit and nonprofit really is where the financial value is at the end of the day. Because in a nonprofit, you don't have a shareholder. The organization is the main beneficiary, together with the people to whom you're making the impact. So I think the biggest issue, though, around any boardroom table is everybody's own personal stories getting in the way. Well, what do I want? How am I going to get something out of this? How am I going to get on the cover of Time Magazine? Is my legacy going to be maintained? So once we take ourselves out of it and we put really the focus on where we want to go and why we're there in the first place, things get a little bit easier.
Yeah, I love that. Adam, I'm going to put you on the spot now to keep adding on to that, because obviously you come from an extensive for-profit background, and so many of us obviously can relate to that in all different capacities of life, our professional careers, and of course in business. With that in mind, there is that same degree of everyone moving in the same direction towards a common goal. As Sophia said, that goal gets distributed in different ways, but ultimately we all want to achieve different things, and removing ego is important. What are some of those things that the deeper you and Sophia go into PlanPerfect together, you realize, wait, we're focusing on the nonprofit world, but all these for-profit things that I gained along the years actually apply perfectly?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think Sophia's point about removing the ego is likely why I've been so attracted to the nonprofit area recently, and probably why I love working with Sophia. I think even though she's been the CEO and was a professor, you can always feel like there's some deeper mission being driven rather than just sort of elevating herself. I think what's so interesting about the for-profit and the nonprofit space is that they're all accomplishing the same exact goal. I mean, a nonprofit is a tax code, as Sophia always says. They're still trying to, make money and execute on a mission. I think, of course, the nonprofit mission is one that likely resonates with more people, or probably feels a little bit deeper than some for-profit companies. But once you're under the hood, I argue that the businesses operate very similarly. I think there's also a really unique opportunity to bring the nonprofit space, quote unquote, up to speed with what's happening in the for-profit space. As you know, I think for-profit institutions are much quicker to adopt technology and move quickly with their strategy, fail quickly, make decisions, and grow in that way. I think what we're saying is that doesn't need to be reserved only for the for-profit industry. I think there's a ton of opportunity in the nonprofit space to leverage these same principles to continue to drive the nonprofit sector forward. And I think that's really what I've found is the most valuable part of my background, is just seeing it live in the for-profit sector and being able to take the best components into PlanPerfect and furthermore into our clients and then the nonprofit sector as a whole.
Yeah, I love the way you articulate that, especially because you're obviously preaching to the choir here, is that as entrepreneurs, we move fast, we break things. That's why there's that phrase of entrepreneurs jump off the cliff and build the parachute on the way down. For better and for worse, we're all willing to do that. And so you two are both obviously doing that in your own business as well with PlanPerfect. But what I really appreciate, Adam, you talk about bringing that for-profit goodness to the nonprofit world. Obviously, technology. It's one of those things that all of us entrepreneurs leverage. I would love for the two of you to introduce us to the technology behind your solution, because obviously that's a big part of it. Having that strategic plan is one thing, but I love the marriage between planning and technology. So what does that look like with what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think really where we started PlanPerfect was in sort of the mix of all of this generative AI movement, or all of the building of AI that has happened in the past, 3+ years. Of course, AI has been around for a lot longer than that, but I think it's become a lot more commoditized and accessible to founders like Sophia and I, whether you're non-technical or have a technical background. For us, I think what we saw was this technology created a really unique opportunity to take what we were doing as a service, all of the information that we had from Sophia's lengthy career, from my background, and really turn it into a scalable technology, leveraging a lot of this AI tooling. So we're quite fortunate that we've been able to have access to a lot of this proprietary data behind the scenes, which really helps our nonprofits actually develop meaningful strategic plans, and use the technology not only to develop them, but ultimately to execute them. I think the biggest thing that happens in the strategic planning world is that you get what everyone says is a plan on the shelf, and we've used the term as well. We really, since day one, have embedded in the technology the idea of not only creating great, amazing strategic plans, but also making sure that our users are executing upon them so they can see the real benefit of having a strategic plan, which obviously is way more than just having the plan itself, but also then taking it and turning it into real tactical actions.
Yeah, Sophia, I'm going to kick it back to you, because obviously we're talking about the speed of execution, the speed of technology. Adam's entered generative AI into the conversation, which these are all things that, again, us as entrepreneurs, we soak that stuff up. again, for better or for worse, the nonprofit world obviously has so many layers of complexity, of considerations. You've got the board, you've got the people who are actually executing the plans, the staff, the executive director. There's a lot of layers here. Fair assessment that nonprofits are moving a little bit slower? And if so, what's the tech adoption like when you guys walk in with PlanPerfect?
The only reason that nonprofits are moving a little bit slower is that the majority of them have been founded by experts in their fields. So let's say you are a dentist and you've had a wonderful career as a dentist, and you want to make sure that every person who cannot afford to go to the dentist gets adequate access to care. So then you begin a free clinic to make sure that everybody gets dentistry. Well, how are you supposed to know how to do all the business components? Like, that's not, it's not a fair ask. So what we're trying to do is shore up the passions and the skills of all of the people who have those specialties to go out in the world. I think about it as a real democratization of it, frankly. And in the past, it was only the large nonprofits or large organizations, let's forget about nonprofit or for-profits, that could afford a consultant to make a plan, a business plan, a strategic plan, whatever you want to call it. And now with this access to technology that we are harnessing in a software with a soft touch, is really taking all the things that I wish I could give every day. If I had an infinite number of minutes in the day that I could give from my heart and my skill set to every single person, that dentist, that doctor, that every teacher, every person who's ever wanted to make a difference in the world, that through this software, we can now do that.
Yeah, really well said. And again, showing your mission as well, something that we can all relate to in our own businesses. You brought up something there that I think we have to talk about, whether we're talking nonprofit world or small businesses, which is, of course, limited resources. Big businesses, gosh, sounds like they can spend money on all these different things, hire consultants like Adam in his past life, but we don't all get to enjoy that on smaller scales. Talk to us about the limited resource nature, because I would imagine in the talks that you both have with your nonprofit clients is that technology is kind of one of those ways that we can enhance and better allocate our limited resources. What does the resource consideration look like when you're having these conversations?
Oh, go ahead, Sophia.
We've priced what we're doing at PlanPerfect to be affordable to most. And for those who may feel that it's a bit out of their reach, we're offering scholarships to the smallest startups. So it's our goal. Certainly, we're a for-profit startup. We're not gonna lie about that. But we have such a passion for what we're doing that we want to make sure that everybody who wants access to a high-quality strategic planning tool can afford it and can get started on their journey with it.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, I think the accessibility piece was always part of our mantra, and thinking about the small to mid-sized nonprofits who maybe can't afford a traditional consulting engagement in order to build their strategic plan. They now have another outlet for developing their strategic plan. And furthermore, we have partnered with consultants as a way of them increasing their capacity. So folks like Sophia who want to kind of grow their impact, but maybe don't have a way of doing that by just, expending their time, as great as that sounds. Our tool is a really great opportunity to offload a lot of the administrative tasks that come with strategic planning while still being able to provide some of that personal touch. So I think it's always been about kind of creating a more accessible approach to strategic planning than the traditional avenue of just having a consultant or a full service consultant take it on. And we're really excited about continuing to partner with the person side of this business as well to grow here.
Yeah, I think that's why it's really fun to engage with both of you here today, is because you're not only thinking about your clients, you're not only thinking about the nonprofit space, but as fellow entrepreneurs, just like the rest of us, you're also thinking about the execution, the implementation of it. You're not just building something great, you're building something great that people actually use. Talk to us about the implementation on the client side, because what I always joke with our internal team about is having a plan is great, but tying it to execution is the most important part of it. Talk to us about that side of the equation.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's always been a through line of ours. I think we've always been really passionate about making sure that what is in our system is also easy to execute against using our system. That's why we say we're an all-in-one solution. And we're really hyper-focused on the strategic plan itself. So we have a light project management tool in the system, reporting tool that, I don't want to say forces our customers, but incentivizes our customers to not only create the plans, but also execute on them in the system, keep them updated, report that out to their board members, et cetera. And that's really where you see the value of a strategic plan, right? In the end, if you just develop the plan and let it sit on a shelf, you're not actually going to extract the value from it. So I would say through our user experience, we've also doubled down on making sure that our users not only create the plans, but are also executing against it.
Yeah. Sophia, I'm going to put you on the spot with your former CEO hat on. What's that execution side of the world look like?
Well, it definitely is not if you build it, they will come. What's so interesting is that I actually haven't been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm very, very happy in big organizations. I'm very happy coming to work every day. And I mean, I'm not lying that was a really hard thing. I mean, having to make payroll for at some points in the year, 800 people was very stressful. So I'm not saying I'm adverse to stress, but definitely trying to make sure that the product meets the client's needs and that you reach more clients. It's really hard. It is definitely not, here's a great product, everybody's just going to come to you and buy it from you. So we've been using a lot of outreach to people we know in our industries, as well as some cold outreach to be able to share with people the power of the software. And then once they get in it, there's that moment of like, oh, is it going to be as good as we hope it is? And every time so far it has been. And I give a lot of credit to the 14 pilot users who came in with us at the beginning. They really gave us great feedback from which to grow. And even when they were maybe even they found a bug or something that they didn't love, they just gave us the feedback in such a meaningfully positive way. So we hope to continue to grow like that. There will be problems. There'll be problems with every single thing anybody ever starts, but we'd like to interface with the client as much as possible.
Yeah, I love those insights, especially because when it comes to building solutions, which is what entrepreneurs do in different capacities, even if it's a service-based business, we're all bringing solutions to the marketplace. And it's hard, Sophia, to your point, to understand what are those features that people need right now? What are the nice to have features? And so we've all heard that concept of the MVP, the minimum viable product, but I'd love to hear, because we are talking about strategic planning. I'm totally going to put the two of you on the spot right now. What's that roadmap look like for PlanPerfect? Because when you're building something out, obviously so much of it is iterative, is about getting those pilot customers and that initial feedback. What's the roadmap look like looking towards the future?
We were actually our first customer. So we used the tool to build a strategic plan for ourselves. And, the first iteration of it was like, build MVP. And then like, get 2 pilot users by end of year. And so, I mean, having a plan for us, this really makes us honest. I mean, to have to use our own tool to keep our own plan. But I would say we look back at it actually this morning. We were talking about making sure that it was up to date. And we're really pleased with how well we've done. Congratulations, partner. I mean, in the small amount of time that we've been doing this. So we're definitely whatever it is, walking the walk.
Yeah, definitely. I think using your own product is huge and has been huge for Sophia and I. I think also one thing we agreed upon early on was kind of getting the initial product out the door to users, even though it wasn't pretty or wasn't beautiful. And I think for us, that was really around the plan creation piece of it all. Sophia always joked that it was a divvy bike, which is a very Chicago reference for anyone who's from Chicago listening. And I think now we've come a lot further than that. But for us, it was really getting that early version out there to not only understand where it might have been broken from a bug perspective, but I think also having customers in the fold thinking about their strategic planning, it became so natural to us to understand where this needed to expand next. It's really sitting closely with our customers, and it's advice you'll hear in a million different ways from a million different people. I think for us, it is definitely what is keeping us honest and keeping us building really impactful software is by sitting as close as possible to our customers and our users. I mean, our first pilot users, we literally watched 5 hours of recordings of them using the system. So we were in it with them, right? And I think that's sort of a mantra that we've kept true at PlanPerfect, and from my perspective, we'll continue to stay true to for as long as we possibly can.
Yes, I love those real life insights, and it leads perfectly into something that I always love to ask co-founders when we have them here on the air. I love these duo episodes because I get to ask, what's your executive time look like? Sophia, you just revealed to all of our listeners that you both just looked at your strategic plan just this morning, and yes, kudos to you both for making things happen and taking action. But what does that look like? Is it a weekly meeting where the two of you sit down and you say, okay, let's look at where we are, let's look at where we want to be, let's look at progress, let's look at roadmaps? Is it a quarterly reflection where you both come to the better side of Florida on the Gulf Coast and you do something in person together? What's that executive time look like?
We've had a nice mixture of getting together in person, and then we spend a lot of time with parallel play on Zoom. So that's just a term from being a mom, and that trying to just sit sometimes and go through all of our lists of things to do together on Zoom, and not have to make every moment that we're meeting productive from a team point of view, but productive also individually. Like if you get into a meeting and just make a list of 400 things to do, then you leave and you feel sort of deflated. But we feel like we keep each other company a lot, and then getting together in person is remarkable. We couldn't have done this without the opportunity to get together in person.
Yeah, and I think the other deeper layer here is the deep level of trust that I have for Sophia. I think we don't need to necessarily be sitting side by side. I can totally trust that if she says she's going to do something, she'll do it at 100%. And I always joke with my partner that Sophia is my best friend. Like, we talk more than anyone else in my life now, and we're always kind of shooting ideas back and forth, and it's always been that way. And I think it's because the product is so part of our combined passion and something we're so excited about that the journey feels enjoyable even when it's sitting and doing some of the less glamorous parts of being an entrepreneur, which has been a really powerful learning for me as I've built PlanPerfect.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Sophia.
I have no idea how people build a company on their own. I just don't. I think that having this partnership and the partnership with, I never thought that in my mid-50s I'd become a tech entrepreneur. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I'm really proud of it, but probably Adam never thought in a million years that he'd find a business partner in somebody like me. So having two people at least who really trust each other, who've had now almost 5 years of at least knowing each other in different contexts. This is how the special stuff is made.
Yeah, I love that, Sophia. And yes, truth be told, entrepreneurship is a lonely journey. And my answer to your question of how people do it alone is they listen to podcasts like this one, and they're joined by amazing co-founders like the two of you. So thank you for sharing those insights. Before we get to the last question that I ask in every episode, I want to squeeze one bonus in with both of you, because I love that neither of you are lifer entrepreneurs. You both, as you've said multiple times, it's kind of an unexpected transition for both of you. So I'm going to totally put you both on the spot now. Ask, what's something that surprised you about the entrepreneurial journey, that once you started PlanPerfect, you said, whoa, holy cow, I knew that we were doing something cool and I knew it'd be a lot of work, but I didn't expect this?
The highs are really high. I can definitely see how people could be serial entrepreneurs. It definitely feels like a really wonderful shot of adrenaline when things go right, when that first customer comes in, when the first person repeatedly wants to buy, when people are smiling, thanking you. I mean, that is what I never got. I mean, I always had wonderful experiences in all my jobs and felt like I was at the top of the world. But this definitely beats it.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's definitely turns up the volume on the highs are much higher, the lows feel like much lower. I think for me, the biggest learning, and you hear this a lot, is you have to fail as an entrepreneur to learn, right? And for me, failure was always capital F failure in a career. It meant you probably were laid off or let go or fired or what have you from your job. To me, that's all I really contemplated failure from being a consultant or working at big companies. I think for me, the hardest thing was really learning what it looks like to put yourself out there or put ideas out there that maybe don't stick or don't work or don't make sense. But you have to keep trying and keep trying to figure it out, because to your point, it's uncharted territory, right? Like by the time somebody else like gives you advice on what to do, they've already done it or they're doing it in a similar way. I think there's like a famous tweet where it's like, I'm happy to give you my winning lottery number, but it was for yesterday's lottery, right? Like at a certain point, you have to figure this out on your own. And I think that has been probably the hardest part for me as an ex-consultant, where I had exorbitant of my time to plan. And I was always the person that was the fail-safe for my clients, is kind of being in the weeds and really tripping through it in some regards. But yeah, to Sophia's point, when we closed that first dollar, I'll never forget like where I was, that we sent the screenshot and it was $600 at the time. So feels like almost insignificant, but I think something so special about that moment that I'll cherish forever.
Mm-hmm.
I love those answers. Adam, I'm a big sucker for quotes. I've never heard that winning lottery ticket for yesterday. That is like one of the truest things ever about entrepreneurship and about advice in general. And that's why I really appreciate having these super transparent conversations on the air. Listeners know there's no pre-planned questions because they just want to learn from your journeys and your experiences, because we're all going to have our own. And so I really appreciate the way both of you have shared that. It makes your life difficult though, because you've been a wealth of knowledge. I don't know how you're going to top all of that for one final piece of advice, but that's the question I'm going to ask you. Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, you both are not only nonprofit experts, you not only are tech entrepreneurs, but you are also fellow business owners, growing your own business along the way. So with that hat on, what's that one piece of advice that you want to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, I love the question. It's a ton of pressure. So hopefully I can do a good one here, and I'll go first, Sophia. Sorry to tee you up for the harder spot. I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that I heard, but it took me figuring it out for me to do is just to go do it, right? Like I think you can sit there and plan forever. You can read every single business book under the sun, listen to every single podcast, kind of do all of the work, spend all the time doing the research. For me, at the end of the day, the biggest piece of advice I have is just to get out there and start playing the game. I think you have to get off the sidelines. That's my entrepreneur sort of advice, is just get in the game and start playing. I think that's really where I learned the most, where I failed the most, where I had the hardest days, where I had the most exciting days. And listen, you have one life to live. For me, it's like I've turned up the volume, and my career is like living life to the fullest extent. And there's days where it's really tough. And there's days where it's really beautiful. And I think just enjoying the journey along the way. But the only way that you're going to be able to get that is by really putting yourself out there and getting in the game.
And when I was young, I remember I was 18. It was my 18th birthday. And my mother said, "Come with me." And we walked down the street and we went to the front porch of a woman who was 98. So our birthdays were the same, but she was clearly much older. And my mother said, "I want you to remember this day forever. And you need to remember that you should always live your life like you're going to live to 100 years old." And so my piece of advice here, especially, is for people in their more of the middle of their careers, or maybe they've achieved something that really already put them at the top of their career, that it's never too late. Start again. I mean, live as if you're going to live to 100 years old, and then keep doubling down. And if you think you can't start a tech company on your own at age 50, whatever, 60, whatever, find a remarkable person in their 20s or 30s and find a wonderful partnership.
Boom. Sophia, giving me chills with that advice. I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years now, and it never gets old because so many pivots are involved, so many times that we reinvent ourselves, reinvent our companies, reinvent our missions, and that's the real stuff. I'm so appreciative of the way that both of you have shown up today with full transparency and generosity and sharing your own experiences, your own insights, and of course, the work that you're doing, which is incredibly impactful and meaningful. So I know that listeners will be keen to check out all the great work that you're doing with PlanPerfect PlanPerfect. I always say that success leaves clues. And so for people, even if they're not leading a nonprofit and they don't need PlanPerfect from that component of having help with a strategic plan, it's really incredible to see your work in action, see how you've laid it out, see how you've thought through your solution and how you bring it to the marketplace. And by the way, you both have amazing testimonials, which doesn't surprise me. So for listeners who want to check out all the great work that you're doing, drop those links on us. Where should they go from here?
Yeah, you can find our website at planperfect.co. And then our emails are just our first names, Adam and Sophia at planperfect.co. If you want to reach out and talk about how you can use this at a nonprofit, or if you serve on a board of a nonprofit, how we can help, more than happy to field those requests and those discussions.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. We're also linking to Sophia and Adam's personal LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out to them and have them in your network, you want to introduce them to somebody else based on today's conversation, don't be shy. Most people are. I know that as a podcast host, so be one of those ones that proactively takes action. Adam gave it in his advice for every single one of you here today. Just go do the thing. Don't be shy. So Sophia, Adam, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having us.